Thank you for joining us on the Look Up Mindset podcast, where real stories of resilience, transformation, and adventure come to life. I'm your host, author, and storyteller, Heidi Siefkas. Each episode, we dive into the journeys of sheroes, heroes, and badasses who faced life's toughest moments and chose to rise. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's be inspired together. Welcome to the Look Up Mindset podcast. I'm your host, author Heidi Siefkas. And in today's episode, Finding the Gift in Your Life, we've invited my friend and contributor to the Look Up Global Stories of Resilience book, Michelle Mann. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate it. I'm very excited to be a part of this journey.
Yeah, it's incredible to see you. We started by an interview via Zoom for the book, and I met you in person just recently. So now this doesn't seem like so much it's virtual. It kind of seems like we're in the same room now.
Exactly. I know. I loved it. I loved being able to actually meet you personally. You know, there's something, I don't know, sacred about that.
So in the community, I let guests introduce themselves because I'm selfish and I typically get to learn more about the guest in their introduction, but also it's self-preservation that I don't introduce them poorly. So the floor is yours, Michelle.
Thank you. Well, my name is Michelle. I am a single mom to a 15-year-old that I homeschool. Right now, I'm actually going to be 61 next year, or this year. Excuse me, in a few weeks, I'm going to be 61. And it's interesting because this year has been very reflective for me. As far as like how far I've come, what my 50s really offered me, which obviously was a lot of changes, a lot of shifting, just a lot. And so, opened up a lot of doors for me to start my sacred circles, which I'm excited to share more about.
Most people ask me how I find my guests, and for this first season, they're all contributors to my latest book. So then the question becomes, well, how did you find people to share their real life shero and hero stories? And it was basically 6 degrees of separation. So I reached out to my friends and family members that had inspirational true stories. Then once that was tapped, I said, well, do you have other friends? So I have a great friend who lives in Tucson, and her best friend happens to know PJ. So PJ introduced himself to my friend. My friend said, you got to meet PJ. So PJ and we did an interview. His chapter was a powerhouse chapter. And I said after we did it, do you happen to know someone who has an inspirational story that could fit the book? And he says, yes, her name is Michelle Mann. So it just was, let's see, how many degrees of separation? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get to you. But then you inspired others to participate in the book. So I think when we met in person, we talked about it was a butterfly effect, but just the ripple effect of the connections that we have kind of show how the book was developed organically, and this is how the podcast also has been developed. So like in any good storytelling, now we get to the setting the scene. So before we get into what would be the pivotal moment or moments that changed your life, we have to kind of go back to where your normal was before these pivotal moments occurred. So could you take me what would be your baseline around 2017?
Yeah, actually, if I may, it's a little bit further than that. As I started to reflect back, especially like I was saying, this year has been this year is my restoration year, but I was reflecting back because I'm going to be 61 in a couple of weeks, and I've never put a lot of thought into age per se, but in my 50s, so much changed, which obviously 2017. But what I realized is that the universe was really trying to get my attention. I was married, I was a mom, I was a real estate agent, I do soul work. I have been doing soul work for over 20 years. I actually heard God say to me very directly just before 2017, I want you to write a book on forgiveness. And I thought, me, right? Have you even heard me speak? I have a hard time putting words together, let alone write, right? And I thought, well, forgiveness is one of those things that throughout my whole life has been something that's come very, very easily for me. It's actually something that I just naturally have. I don't know why, but I do. It's just my process is easy to forgive. So I thought, okay, this is a no-brainer. Well, then 2017 happened, and March 4th of 2017, I was hit head on by a drunk driver at a collective speed of 100 miles an hour. He hit my truck right square in the middle. And right before he hit me, I had been praying, and, my world at that point had already been starting to kind of fall apart, kind of I was looking at things and going, it's just not, things are not working. My marriage was struggling. I was struggling physically, emotionally, spiritually. I was struggling because I didn't know what was happening. The universe was like coming down on me because I wasn't where I needed to be, I guess. And, so when I was hit, when this man was coming at me, I could feel, I knew it was a man. I knew he was drunk, and I knew that I could feel everything about his life. It was the most strange thing. And right before he hit me, I heard audibly God say, you're going to be hit, but everything is going to be okay. And I thought, what? What does that mean? And then right before I blacked out, I felt these golden wings literally come around me and hold me. And then I blacked out. When I woke up, I was up on the side of the road because I was on a 2-lane road out in the middle of the desert. So the fact that there were 3 cars at that time coming at me was even odd at that time of night. It was a little after 9. And when I woke up, I was up on the side of the road. My headlights were out into the desert, but there was no vehicle in front of me, which kind of threw me. And I remember looking in the back of my rearview mirror. My son's car seat was in the back. No him, thank God. But it took me a minute because I was a bit dazed. Everything was on the floorboard. I got out. My truck was definitely, hit. And I kept thinking, gosh, I know I was hit, but where's the car, right? So anyway, to make a long story short, that was my first, I guess, initiation into the deeper levels of what forgiveness really meant, which I didn't understand at the time, but I had nothing but love for this human who had hit me because it was as if I exchanged spaces with him. I could feel everything. I knew all the details as to why he was in the position that he was. And so anyway, so that's kind of what started this whole process for me. I ended up with a fractured neck. I ended up with a severe TBI where my vision was impacted. I couldn't drive for 7 years, and I was stuck in my home for that amount of time with no ability to leave unless I had others help me.
So when something impacts you physically, typically there is a ripple effect that happens across all aspects. Did that happen in your story?
Did it? Yes, everything fell apart, if that's what you're asking. Like, my whole world completely unraveled because initially I was on an euphoria. I was very high. I was like, I lived, I survived them, so, in my world, that was a good thing, and, but then everything just completely unraveled. Like I said, I couldn't drive. So my freedom was taken. My husband walked out and left. And my little boy my biggest concern was obviously for my son, making sure that we kept his life as normal as possible, because it was a pretty tragic situation seeing your mom in a neck brace, my whole ability to participate as I was in his schooling, driving him, going places, doing fun things. All of that changed. My career, I lost my career, and I found myself a few years later completely devastated. But then the universe was like, oh, now it's time for you to learn these lessons that this whole experience happened for, because I was unaware at that moment. I knew it was for a purpose. I just didn't fully have the concept of what that purpose was. And so when everything was literally stripped away and I found myself in the middle of darkness, because if you've ever experienced a TBI or a concussion or anything like that, for me, what ended up happening is I went into the darkness within my own self, because I couldn't remember things. I couldn't watch things. I couldn't be in the sunlight. But yet I was still trying to maintain keeping normality from my little boy. So, it was quite a struggle, to be honest.
I remember from our first conversation, you talked about hearing a voice and it was telling you of where you should look to rebuild or start your life. And I think it was kind of like that divine voice that spoke to you in the truck.
The beginning of 2022, actually, I thought that things were moving in a much different manner for me, that they were, that things were going to happen. And that's when I was actually sitting in the house and I heard that divine voice again. And it said, well, you can sit in here and pout. You can sit in here and do nothing, waiting, or you can walk out that door and you can grow where I planted you. And I thought, what? Have you seen where you planted me? Like, I'm in the middle of a desert, for goodness sakes. There's nothing around but dirt, cactus, lots of things that want to poke you, bite you, hurt you. And I'm like, and you want me to grow here? I'm like, okay, fine. Well, then I had, we get help from the food bank. Thank you. And these two people from the food bank that I had met, ironically, before my car accident, mind you, did not know that until later on in this, they inspired me to paint my garage floor because they were like, we might be able to use this as something for ourselves. So I had painted it and I thought, okay, so God wants me to grow where he's planted me. What does that even mean? And I walked out into my garage that, mind you, was filled with lots and lots of stuff. And my teacher at the time, who was a Lakota Dakota Native American, he said, Michelle, start sacred circles for women. I think you would be very good at that, and I thought, oh, okay, so if I can't join them, maybe they can join me. They can come to me. So that's what I started to do. And in that process, what I started to realize is that the aspect of forgiveness that I was being asked initially to write about actually had very little to do with what I thought it had to do with, because during this process of building up my garage into a sacred place, starting these sacred circles that began on September of 2022, and have been running consistently now since that time, every month, was really all about loving of ourself. And I have come to realize that the gift from this accident, the gift from those that I've met, the gift of being in isolation, the gift of my TBI, to be honest with you, and the gift of so much loss that I experienced has really been so that I could personally dig deeper into that self-love, that self-value, that self-worth. And now every month I hold these sacred circles that are based from a Lakota Dakota altar of bridging heaven and earth, basically within ourselves, which is all about forgiveness. So I find it so fascinating how the universe literally brings everything full circle when we're open to it. Clearly, I needed a little extra push, but you know.
Now hearing the transition from doing it in a book format, which could only, reach people in some way, now you're reaching people in a different way. And also it worked out in your world that you were unable at the time to go to people, but you could welcome people.
Yeah, I just opened up my space and just trusted that, those who needed to come would come, and, those ready to fulfill whatever it was that they were missing. Because for me, when you lose everything, or you feel like you've lost everything, because in reality, it's just about cleaning our souls more deeply off and getting down to the truth and the core of who we really are. And the core of who we really are is, as one of the ladies texted me today, because I asked the sisters, I said, I want to talk about our sacred circles today. Is there anything that anybody could or would like to contribute? And one of them said, I will never forget that you reminded us that we are all made of light. And it's true, and this journey for me, as I said earlier, I could forgive others, but there's this veil that I've come to realize that's been placed on most of us, that we have this belief system that we're not good enough yet, we're not worthy enough yet, we're not forgivable, we're not lovable, we're not, whatever that we're not is, that we place on ourselves, that doesn't allow us to walk into our full authenticity of who we really are. And who we really are is beauty and light and balance and harmony. And all of those things get kind of, I was explaining ironically to my son yesterday. I said, sometimes what the simple way I'm going to explain it, that I said to him is, I said, imagine when you drop into this world, you come in and you're obviously naked, right? So you have nothing on, and you're just your pure essence of who you are, this beauty and this excitement and purity, basically. And then all of a sudden, as life goes on, you put clothes on. And so it's like you're in a storm, a really winter storm, and you've got layers and layers and layers of stuff on, but it's on your soul. So you begin to forget who you are internally in your heart, in the truth of you. And these sacred circles and my experience, my whole journey that's led me to this, my car accident, my husband leaving, everything that was stripped away, I've always asked, well, what is this for? Why is this happening? And every time it's like you strip that layer off, those beliefs off, those ideas off, that lack of, that you feel off. And so many of us don't feel safe enough to be really vulnerable. And the truth is, everything we need is inside of us, everything. But sometimes we just need that safe place where you can just strip off your clothes and be in that vulnerable place and allow yourself to truly be seen, so that you can process those emotions, see the truth of why you did something, so that you can have deeper forgiveness for yourself. And then, more importantly, you have complete love for yourself. And that's really the process that, since 2017, that my car accident created, was this opportunity, and these sacred circles were born because I personally needed that. And I realized so did so many other people. And we as sisters, we really need each other. I mean, we really inspire each other when we come together in our unique ways to fully be held, seen, and loved.
Well, you're the second guest who has stressed something about a third space being needed, because we have a place where we live, probably a place that we work, but we need a third place that is a place where we can share our true selves and our stories. And so your sacred circles, and at least the goal of this podcast is to be another third space where people can feel comfortable being vulnerable, so that others feel that they can be their authentic self. Could you explain a little bit about what are some of the techniques you use in the sacred circles?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Um, so like I've mentioned, I trained with a Dakota medicine man, holy man, um, who passed on his altar for me to use within the sacred circle. Just to give a little bit of background, I've studied with Apache traditions, I've studied Navajo traditions. I was raised on Apache land. And around a lot of the indigenous First Nations teachings and ways. And there's usually what we have is we all sit in a circle because there is no piece more important than another piece. We're all valuable, we all have importance, and we all have something that we're here to contribute to the bigger whole. We can work with our hands because the grandmothers, if you study the grandmothers, the amazing wisdom holders of our planet, these grandmothers, they say that everything comes through our hands. So we work with doing crafts of some sort that align with each direction that helps to bring us more inward into whatever it is that we're needing. We also have, I have a talking stick that was created that each of the women, the sisters that come, if they choose, they can chat, they can share, and if someone has a story or something that they're looking for, they can ask about that.
Well, in writing the book and interviewing people for that compilation, then re-interviewing in the format of a podcast, I keep on hearing this through line that is twofold. People didn't overcome anything by themselves. They had community. You had helpers, and now you're becoming the helper for others. And probably you see it full circle that they're helping you and vice versa. But the other one was that there was a perspective shift. And I wanted to ask you, how does your story align with what I distilled those into two words? Look up.
My way of being able to look up, because when you find yourself flat on your back, literally flat on your back, you have no other option but to look up or quit. And I think I'm a little too stubborn for quitting, even though I threaten it a lot. It's like, this is too much. I'm so done. I don't want to do this anymore. And we just naturally have no other option but to look up because we're in such deep gratitude, or at least I am. I'm in such deep gratitude for every experience I've had. Even though it's been hard, it's been challenging, and I wouldn't wish it upon anybody unless it was going to allow them to grow. Because for me, everything I've gone through has brought me into a deeper awareness, which has allowed me to look up and be in such humbleness for everything. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, that's why we titled your chapter, Finding the Gift in My Situation, because you have encountered quite a few hardships, and from each and every one of those, you've gained wisdom, and, you've put another badge of honor on, and it's something that you can now offer as part of the gifts of the circle.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like in our world, there's so much judgment and there's so much, it's just hard. And I don't mean that in a negative, it's people are fearful, they're afraid, and it's okay. There's not really anything I'm afraid of. When you face your own shadow and the darknesses that I've experienced upon this planet in my 60 years of being here, you learn that love, really loving, is powerful medicine.
So how could people find more information about your sacred circles?
I am on Facebook right now, and so they can find me on Facebook. One of the things that I am being inspired to look into is to do some type of a nonprofit around the sacred circles. Because I've taken these sacred circles, something I haven't added, sorry. There's just so much that I teach little girls. And I've also taught men and women going into the prison environment. And I've taken what I use for the sacred circle, and I've applied it in those environments. And it's had huge success. Men who they don't look like they would have any emotions start to cry because they're seeing for the first time. And so one of the things that I'm looking at trying to do this year, if possible, is do some sort of a nonprofit where I can expand these teachings to others besides my sacred circles once a month that I do for the women.
Well, I'll include the link for the sacred circles in the show notes, and feel free to reach out to Michelle. And this is meant to be a way to connect with a myriad of people. Good people do good things together.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes. So thank you, Michelle, for sharing your story first and foremost today with the podcast, but also with the book for those that have read Look Up Global Stories of Resilience. And a special shout out to those listeners and viewers who are listening to us around the globe. If you like this, subscribe, share it. Go back to previous episodes. There's some amazing real-life heroes that are sharing their story, and there's more to come. So we end every episode with a little cheers. Here's to looking up.
Here's to looking up.
Looking up. Well, that's a wrap on today's episode of the Look Up Mindset podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If the story inspired you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a boost. And remember, Look Up is always at your fingertips, whenever and wherever you need it. Until next time, here's to looking up.